So our next speaker is Nihan Halp from Sabahatnachari University about the neural signatures of redundancy masking investigated by EEG frequency tagging.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. When we constantly encounter complex visual scene in our everyday life, such as this one, where our brain efficiently processes all these inputs. For instance, here, let's say we move our eyes to process this complex visual environment to find a pineapple. So to extract fine spatial detail, we use foveal vision. However, a lot of information is processed by peripheral vision. There are a lot of limitations of peripheral vision, such as low spatial resolution and visual crowding. As you're familiar, in visual crowding, when a target is presented in isolation, it's easy to identify it. However, when target is surrounded by flankers, it's difficult to identify elements in that array. So this is known as visual crowding. And crowding is, however, crowding is not the only distinctive mechanism that is strong in peripheral vision. So there's a related but distinct phenomena called redundancy masking. The redundancy masking occurs when multiple identical repeating items are presented in the periphery. So now please fixate here in the center, and I will present the stimulus in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 3 identical items were shown briefly, but probably some of you perceived only 2. Yildirim and colleague briefly present what did they perceive. So most of the participants report perceiving less than what actually was presented. So this means that when the presented items are identical, redundancy masking occurs. So this effect doesn't only occur with short presentation time or only with lines. In the first study that reported redundancy masking, Saim and Taylor presented 3 T's in the periphery, and this time with gaze contingent experiment without limiting presentation time. Then participants were asked to verbally report and draw what they saw. Researchers found for the first time that participants most often reported and drew only 2 T's. So this reduction of the number of perceived items in periphery, in repeating patterns, is called redundancy masking. So previous studies showed when 3 identical items were presented, the central line was masked, and there was a compression of space, as illustrated here. The innermost and the outermost lines were perceived to be closer. However, it's unclear what mechanisms underlie this phenomena. So in particular, whether the central item is suppressed or integrated is not known. So hence, one of the possible mechanisms is suppression, in which the features of central items are lost. For example, in line with suppression, we found that the spatial features of the central item were not pooled with the 2 reported items. So this results show that 2 remaining items were perceived highly accurately and not thicker as it would have been expected under pooling. The second mechanism, however, is integration. So features of the central item are combined with the surrounding items. So the central item could be integrated with the left or with the right item as shown here, or with both items. For example, in line with this integration, we found that a gap presented on the redundancy masked, so central item, was predominantly perceived on the outermost item, suggesting integration between central and outermost items. So we have evidence for both for suppression and integration in redundancy masking in the spatial domain. Here, we use frequency tagging to investigate suppression versus integration using flickering stimuli at different frequencies. So when we excite retina at specific frequencies, brain generates electrical activity at the same or multiple of those frequencies. And by tracking the brain's response at each item's frequency, as shown here, F1, F2, and F3, we investigated the underlying neural signatures of each individual items and participants' subjective experience. So for instance, here you see 3 items presented with 3 distinct frequencies, and the neurons that correspond to the innermost item will be represented by F1, while the neurons that correspond to the outermost item will be represented by F3. So therefore, when participants perceive 3 items, we expect to see signal-to-noise ratio of these 3 frequencies to be approximately equally strong, as all items are equally represented at the neural level. So under the suppression hypothesis, however, the brain's response to the central item would be expected to be reduced. And in the frequency spectrum, this would look like a reduced signal or missing peak for the frequency associated with the central item. On the other hand, if the separately tagged items are integrated at the neural level, we expect to see the combination of F1, F2, or F3 depending on the underlying integration. So these are called intermodulation frequencies, as shown here. So under the integration hypothesis, the brain integrates information from central or surrounding items. For example, if the central and outermost items are integrated, we expect to see signal-to-noise ratio, specifically at F2 plus F3, being significantly larger than the other combination of input frequencies, such as F1 plus F2 or F1 plus F3. So by looking at the fundamental frequencies and the intermodulation components simultaneously, we can test whether the central item is suppressed or integrated with the two perceived items. Here we applied frequency tagging to 3 arcs. So each arc was flickering at different frequencies, meaning that their contrast was changing between the mid-gray and white on a black background. And the arcs were presented at 17.3, 19.5, and 21.7 degrees eccentricity. We presented that for 10 seconds. And we asked participants to indicate how many arcs that they perceived at the end of stimulus presentation. So the idea here is that if integration hypothesis holds, when participants perceive 2 arcs, we expect to see stronger intermodulation component compared to when they indicate they perceive 3. Well, first, let's look at the behavioral result. On the x-axis, you see the number of perceived items, and on y-axis, you see the percentage. So these are perceived number of responses collected after each trials. Participants perceived 2 arcs most of the time, followed by 3 arcs. And there were very few trials where participants perceived 1, 4, or 5 arcs. And therefore, we only further analyzed the response 2 and 3, which means that there were redundancy masking trials and non-redundancy masking trials. This graph shows the frequency spectrum of EEG data. On x-axis, you see the frequencies. On y-axis, you see the signal-to-noise ratio. So the peak above SNR1 indicates statistically significant peaks. So this is just to show you the overall spectrum, just to show that even when we present very thin arcs in the periphery, we were able to see clear peaks at the fundamental as well as the harmonics and the intermodulation components. So now we will look at specific comparisons depending on the perceived number of items. First, let's look at when participants report seeing 3 arcs. Here we choose a region of interest based on the fundamental frequencies and presentation side, meaning that when the arcs were presented in the right visual field, electrodes at the left hemisphere showed most activation, and vice versa for when the arcs were presented in the left visual field. So this graph over here is showing a result from the average of best 6 electrodes over the left and right hemifield. So when participants report perceiving 3 arcs, we see all three frequencies being represented equally, so there's no significant difference in their signal-to-noise ratio. On the other hand, when participant reports perceiving 2, a different pattern emerges. So the signal-to-noise ratio for the outermost arc is significantly stronger than the other 2. So possibly due to reduction of interference by the central item or feedback from the intermodulation frequencies. Next, we examined intermodulation frequencies. So remember, these are the components indicate integration between the items. And this data is averaged from the best 6 electrodes when intermodulation frequencies showed most activation for the left and right visual field presentation. So this data again averaged from the best 6 electrodes when intermodulation frequencies showed most activation. So when participants perceive 3 items, we see no differences across signal-to-noise ratio of intermodulation components, suggesting individual items were processed and there were no integration. However, when participants reported perceiving 2, the intermodulation components, especially F2 plus F3, which emerged from the interaction between the central and the outer arc, is the strongest. So this is also significantly different than when participants indicate perceiving 3 arcs, suggesting integration between central and outer arcs when redundancy masking occurs. Okay. To sum up, there was a strong redundancy masking. Participants perceived most of the time 2 rather than 3 arcs. Even though items were presented quite far in the periphery, we were able to extract frequency components not only in the fundamental frequencies but also in the intermodulation frequencies, suggesting robustness of our technique. And we show highest neural response from the outer arc under redundancy masking. Our results suggest that central arc is not suppressed. Instead, a strong intermodulation component of the central and the outer arc indicate neural integration between these items. However, their spatial features are not pooled, as I mentioned earlier. So our result further suggests that conscious access to targets in redundancy masking is lost at the stage after processing of the target features. With this, I would like to thank everyone involved in this project and to BITAC, which made this work possible, and thank you all.